Hey, good to see you, buddy. How's the campaign going? Yeah, that's great.
Having fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, my chair is rocking. I couldn't get it moved of it.
Really? So there should be a button somewhere that you can click it to make it rock or not rock. So somebody must have,
Yeah,
Either
that's
click
two
the
hundred.
button.
Yeah, there's 200.
yeah. Huh, there's usually something that makes it rock and something that makes it, oh, see, now it's this way, it's on this side.
What do you?
So if you push it down, it doesn't rock.
Oh, yeah.
And if you push it up, it does rock.
Yeah. What's the other one do?
That one's going to make you go up for dance.
I don't want to hit that and it'll drop to the floor.
I know.
Says fail. What you do first? Then we finish and chemical.
Sir.
I'd like to call the council meeting to order and council now in session. At this time, we'll have the invocation and pledge allegiance to the flag by Ms. Kimma Gardner Smith.
For those that would like to pray with us. Heavenly Father, we ask your blessings on this evening. We ask your blessings on our entire town and our citizens, Father. We lift this time up to you. We ask you to bless our fire department, our police department, all of our departments that give and serve others in the community, Lord. Help us to remember that it's all for our town and help us to be proud of where we are here in this town, Lord. We lift this time up to you this evening and that your guidance will be here for every one of us, Lord. We lift it up to you. In your name we pray with thanks. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Proclamations and resolutions. Ms. Beth.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, if you can come down. Also Brandon Fish.
Hello.
Hi. Okay, we're doing proclamation. Whereas the Holocaust was the state-sponsored systematic persecution and annihilation of European Jewry by Nazi Germany and its collaborators between 1933 and 1945. And whereas we remember with sadness the 11 million people, including 6 million Jews, who were victims of Hitler's final solution, along with those who were persecuted for their religious and political beliefs, sexual orientation, and physical disabilities. And whereas we remember with respect the survivors who escaped, were sheltered, or who were freed and who lived to contribute so much to our community and to our world. And whereas the history of the Holocaust offers an opportunity to reflect on the moral responsibilities of individual societies and governments. And whereas we have an obligation to ensure that the memory and legacy of lives lost or forever changed in this horrific event are never forgotten. Now therefore, Mayor Ricky Waring and members of Town Council of Somerville hereby resolve to honor the memory of the victims, survivors, rescuers, and liberators of the Holocaust. Next, Bob Ennis. On May 21st, 1881, the USTA, originally known as the United States National Lawn Tennis Association, was founded in New York Town, New York, to create rules and standards for the emerging game of lawn tennis. And whereas the USTA is the nonprofit national governing body for tennis in the United States and leads the promotion and growth of the sport at every level of play, from beginners to professionals at the US Open. And whereas the USTA proudly partners with local tennis programs to showcase the important health, social, and educational benefits of tennis and make the sport available to everyone, regardless of age, environment, condition, or ability, through its USTA adaptive grants. And whereas by increasing the accessibility of tennis for citizens of Somerville of all ages and ability, the USTA has contributed to making our community happier and healthier. Now therefore, Mayor Ricky Waring and the members of the Town of Somerville Council do hereby proclaim the month of May 2023 as National Tennis Month. Next, Russ Cornett and staff. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are of vital importance to sustainable and resilient communities and to the public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of Somerville. And whereas these infrastructure, facilities, and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are engineers, managers, and employees at all levels of government who are responsible for rebuilding, improving, and protecting our nation's transportation, water supply, water treatment and solid waste systems, public buildings, and other structures and facilities essential for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the town of Somerville to gain knowledge of, to maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs. Now therefore, Mayor Ricky Waring and the members of the Somerville Town Council do hereby proclaim the week of May 21st through May 27th, 2023 as National Public Works Week, and urge the citizens of the town of Somerville to recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our national health, safety, and quality of life. Dan. Whereas Dan Corbin began his career with the town of Somerville on April 8th, 1982, as a mechanic in the maintenance department, working his way up to eventually become the manager of the maintenance department. And whereas on June 2nd, 2023, Dan Corbin will retire from the town of Somerville after 41 years of dedicated public service to the town. And whereas the mayor, council members, and staff are grateful for the legacy of consistent commitment and excellence that Dan Corbin has bestowed on the town of Somerville. And whereas Dan has managed and supervised the town's fleet maintenance shop with the focus of keeping the town's vehicles and equipment running safe and efficiently. And whereas Dan has positively impacted the lives of many employees, current and past, through his hard work and dedication to his position. Now therefore be it resolved that the mayor and town of Somerville council members, by this resolution, express deep appreciation for the dedicated public service of Dan Corbin and congratulate him on the occasion of his retirement from the town of Somerville after an exemplary career of 41 years.
Okay, approval of the minutes of the previous meetings. We have a motion on them.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion, we approve the minutes of the previous meeting held on town council meeting on April the 13th, 2023, special council meeting budget retreat, April 2021, 2023, and the standing committee meetings on May the 8th, 2023.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
Any discussion on those? If not, all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise, ayes carry. Okay, public comments for this meeting, May 11th. Do we have any, Beth?
Yes, sir. First, Dickie Myler.
Mayor, good evening, town council members. UW. I'm here to speak about the amended UDO about lowering the height of the buildings in the downtown mixed use area. As we all are aware, the town of Somerville is exploding in growth and experiencing incremental growth development in certain areas, which is a very healthy thing for a vibrant community, as long as the new conformity of that does not implode or diminish the value of those adjacent properties. Because of the cost and time and the need for density due to space, developers would love to see the verticality law totally diminished and removed. And as a real estate broker, I certainly understand that. And any time, however, the subjects such as restrictions on height and use are raised, that it always becomes very contentious, because it pulls on the emotional heartstrings of those involved. 2 weeks ago, I had to go to Mount Pleasant to a funeral down Coleman Boulevard. And after I went to Shem Creek, I didn't realize I was in Mount Pleasant anymore. They've totally lost their landscape. I had to go to Meeting Street to pick up some things. And as I was going over the bridge to Charleston, you couldn't see the harbor anymore. They're totally changing the landscape of these cities that we love. And I don't want it to happen to Somerville. Therefore, I believe there's great wisdom in reducing the restriction. And I looked at some information that I found, and some of the real benefits of such as the protection of any potential hazard or fire that requires the personnel to be there for deployment and for their safety. Protection of view for those that are part of that and those that are obstructed by it. Protection of light and air, elements that we all need in the natural habitat for health conscious reasons. Of course, protection of the character of the neighborhood to prevent drastic changes in the landscape that everybody has enjoyed. And also protection of the adjacent properties, so they will not lose value if something happens that diminishes that. So I certainly understand the need for restrictions, but I like to lower it. And this might be extreme, but some urban areas have suggested the maximum height should be 2 stories or the equivalent of 1.5 times the size of the adjacent building, whichever is greater. I think that's too extreme, but I am in favor of reducing it down to 47 feet downtown, and our efforts to continue to preserve the landscape and the look of this town that we all love and work in and want to preserve. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to have another second. I wanted to also address something totally different. It's miscellaneous item 9 about the reconsideration of council decision to condemn 205 West Luke Street. I understand the city's purview, their authority, they can and cannot do, and I'm not standing in the way of that. However, that piece of property is owned by 2 very respected builders in town, whose grandfather is one of the most respected builders of all time in Somerville. And obviously, because of title issues, that land has remained a blight for several years since their ownership in 2016. If they could have cleared that title, it's tied up in heirs property. All we'd see is a vacant lot. I don't think we'd be having this discussion. All I would ask the town council to reconsider maybe time to give them a chance to clear title, at least therefore to get commercial appraisals, independent, to get highest and best dollar for them for that land that Somerville takes over. Thank you, council.
Next, Sam Swales.
Good evening, council. On behalf of my brothers, Joe and Davey, who are also my business partners, we thank the council members and the mayor for what you do for this town. We wanted to say that out front. We appreciate what you guys do. On the agenda, of course, is 205 West Luke and 209, the reconsideration of that. We appreciate having the opportunity to speak to Mr. Brown and Mr. Mayor Waring, regarding that decision and having it back on the agenda for discussion tonight. We really appreciate the council doing that with us. In 2016, as Dickie might have mentioned, 205 came on the market. And we, of course, immediately jumped on that opportunity to purchase that property. But as you're aware, it became quite a journey. The property was divided up into over 27 different individuals that were for a family, and they didn't even see eye to eye. So just a little bit of background from who we are. My brothers and I work together. We're Classic Construction of Somerville, born and raised right here in town. Our mom, who's in the audience today, was also graduated from Somerville. She was raised right here on Simmons Avenue. And our grandfather, as mentioned, Marvin Benford, built many homes in our area, in the town, a few commercial buildings, like Sherwin-Williams Building, and even moving and reestablishing the existing house that was on the original SE&G Dominion Energy property. It's now on Orangeburg Road, where my family was living in that home. Like I said, my brother Davey, he's also my partner. He has 4 children. My brother Joe, he has 2 children, and I myself have 4 children, all raised here in Somerville. And the reason for this background information on us is because the condemning of this property of 205 and 209 is not in the best interest of us as owners. This decision plays a huge impact on us. It includes our family, the Ellingtons, the Tuckers, who we've all been working together to stop the condemnation best that we're able to. It's not just a piece of real estate. For us, it represents our livelihood. We've worked hard to make good investments so that we can work here in the town. We are proud citizens of this town. We've invested over $100,000 just in 205 West 4th North Street. And we're 5% away from owning 100% to work towards clear title. And just to give you an idea of something we were considering eventually building on it, this was in 2003, or excuse me, 2022, September, the downtown train tracks. That's the property. Just to give you an idea of what something we were considering building there. Sorry. And you know, from the youth born and raised here in Somerville, we're advised to plan ahead, plan for your future, build a nest egg, right? In case bad times come for you and your family. Well, a large part of this property is our nest egg. We've not just for us though, as me and my brothers, but for our family's future. Condemning the property is not in the best interest of the citizens, as us and taxpayers of this town. And we understand the process. After the purchase of the Dominion Energy, it makes sense to try to own the whole block. And some people might consider that a good opportunity to control what's built there. But we have the UDO, a Unified Development Ordinance that really controls what's built there. And so title issues can be worked out. We have judicial ways of doing that. We've been working with all of the owners and we've been working with a real estate attorney to get clear title, and that's been part of the process. Collectively, we've been working with the other people that have interest, the other families, and collectively, we're here to ask the council to please reconsider condemning that and working with us. Deciding not to condemn the property, these properties, does not mean that the town will not have the opportunity later to purchase these properties at fair market value or to work with us in the development of the property. We're just asking to do what's neighborly and what's fair and right for us as citizens of this town by asking you not to seek condemnation on our property. We appreciate your opportunity, or our opportunity to speak before you.
Aisha Ellington.
So thanks for allowing me to speak today. I'm Aisha Ellington. I'm one of the family members for the property as well on Luke Drive, and I would love for you guys to reconsider condemning our property. It's been in our family for a long time, and we would just love for you to reconsider.
Willie Ellington,
Good evening. My name is Willie C. Ellington. My uncle, Willie E. Ellington, owned a dry cleaners in the same spot many years ago. He had a daughter, and her name is Dorothy. Right now, Dorothy fell, she's 87, and she was in the hospital. Now she's in a rehab. I didn't even mention none of this. Because she said, before that, she said, finally, we're gonna be able to get a little something for the property. Now the property is in condemnation. So I'm just asking y'all to please reconsider, to give us the opportunity to get a fair share value of the property. That's all I got.
Mr. Mayor, that's all I have for public comment.
Okay, petitions,
No petitions, Mayor.
no petitions. Okay, pending bills and resolutions.
Second and final reading of an ordinance to annex TMS number 2200002-147, located on North Maple Street and totaling approximately 10.34 acres. Currently zoned PD OPIP Planned Development Office Park Industrial Park in Berkeley County, and will be zoned GB General Business upon annexation into the town of Somerville's municipal limits.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move second and final reading of the ordinance. Second.
Okay, motion on the floor to have second reading and a second. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor of this, raise your right hand. Vote aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes carried.
Second and final reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 8, Article 2, Section 8-42-2 to exclude business licenses for insurers, insurance brokers, and telecommunication from the 1-month interest-free grace period for non-payment of business license taxes.
Mr. Mayor, I make motion, we give second and final reading.
I'll second.
A motion made and second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I will vote against this because I think the insurance industry should not be excluded from the grace period when they file for their business license. The insurance industry is a very, very large industry that pays a lot of revenue to all governmental agencies. And this excludes small brokers. And I just don't think that's fair. So
Councilman Brown, if I could clarify, the insurance brokers are collected through the state and we can't force the state to offer them a grace period.
sure,
that
I
your
understand that.
understanding?
But I just thought I'd make this statement because I think it's unfair to the small brokers who sell insurance, even though they sell for these big conglomerates that pay money to the state. It's just not fair. You got the small business trying to make a living and it's tough enough already. So
Understand what you're saying?
Now I may need a clarification. I understand that business licenses for telecommunications and the insurance industry are collected by the state and paid to us by the state. This ordinance would exclude the state from the grace period?
No, sir. So I think it was 2 months ago, you all passed our local ordinance that gave our local businesses the 30-day grace period.
Correct.
And in that ordinance, it talked about insurers and telecommunicators. So this is just an attempt to clarify that because they are listed in our local ordinance. The 30-day grace period, it looks like it applies to them, but we can't because the state actually collects those funds. So this excludes them from the grace period.
Well, then
thought that was what I asked. But let me put it this way. When the state, if the state pays us grace period or no grace period, if the state in its infinite wisdom pays us after 45 days, is there a penalty?
Oh,
So it just doesn't apply, is what you're saying. Either way, if they pay 45 days early, 45 days late, we don't get to penalize the state of South Carolina.
correct.
Also, those three classifications are governed by state statute, and the state statute does not provide for granting a grace period. That major impetus to have this ordinance, and it sort of goes hand in hand with the next ordinance that you're going to.
But if I'm understanding correctly, the ordinance that we passed recently, extending the grace period, if it just hadn't mentioned insurers, insurance brokers, or telecommunications industry, this wouldn't be before us. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we can't have those three classifications lumped into our grace period.
Because they don't actually pay a penalty no matter when they pay it. Seems awfully unnecessary, but if Corporation Council says it clears something up, I guess I'll vote for it. They don't need the grace period because they don't pay penalties because they're the state of South Carolina.
Mr. Mayor, I just think, I know this is controlled by the state, but I think, it's overlooking the plight of small businesses, and that's my concern.
It sounds like to me there's nothing we can do about that. That's probably why we voted for it to start with. That's probably why we had first reading.
If I might, just again, the ordinance that you're going to consider next. I read that ordinance's clause in here, and I couldn't put my finger on it right now to put a gun in my head. But the way that it's read, the way that I read it, if we don't exempt the three classifications, that could cause serious consequences for our business or anyone. So we really need to get this passed.
Like I
Okay.
said, I'll rely on Corporation Council's advice and vote for it. But whether or not we have a grace period for an entity that we can't levy penalties on, seems like we just sucking in too much oxygen and spitting out too much carbon dioxide.
All right, any other discussion?
If I might add, I also discussed this with municipal association, general counsel, and he agreed with me that we needed to do it.
Okay. All right, all in favor of this, having this second reading, signify by raising your right hand, vote aye. Aye. Opposed, likewise. Opposed, okay. Beth, you got that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. C,
Second final reading of an ordinance authorizing and directing the town of Somerville to enter into an intergovernmental agreement relating to South Carolina local revenue services to participate in one or more local revenue service programs, to execute and deliver one or more participant program supplements and other matters relating thereto.
I'll make the motion that we pass this.
second. Okay, motion on the floor in a second. Any discussion on this one? Pretty well the same thing as the other one. Hearing no discussion, all in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, vote aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. Ayes carried.
Second and final reading of an ordinance to rezone TMS number 23200021331, located on Merrymead Drive and Angus Drive, approximately 12.983 acres and owned by Invesco LP from LI Light Industrial to GB General Business, and this would be in Council District 2.
Mr. Mayor, I'd move second and final reading of the ordinance.
Second.
A motion made and second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. The ayes carry. Introduction of bills and resolutions.
First reading of an ordinance to adopt an operating budget for the town of Southville, South Carolina for the fiscal period beginning July 1st, 2023 and ending June 30th, 2024.
Mr. Mayor, I'd make a motion, we give first reading.
I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
All right, got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I do intend to vote for first reading of this ordinance. I think a lot, as I said on Monday, I think a lot of really hard and really good work has gone into this budget. And as I did on Monday, I would commend Ms. Moore and Ms. Wallace for their work on this budget. As I said then, this is probably the most transparent budget process I've been a part of since I've been on council. So I am voting for first reading. I do not know yet how I'll vote on second and final reading. I do believe, for reasons that hopefully will become apparent to this council at some point in the next 30 days, I do believe that there's room in this budget for a millage reduction that would also preserve the employee pay adjustments or raises that are in this budget. So I'm not committing to vote for it on second reading, but I'm happy to vote for it on first reading.
Any other discussion? We got a motion and a second. All in favor signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. The ayes carry.
First reading of an ordinance to amend Chapter 2 Administration, Article 2 Mayor and Council, Division 2 Mayor, Section 2-63 Authority to set meeting agenda.
I'll make a motion, we give first reading.
Second.
Motion on the floor and the second. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't really have a strong opinion on this, but I do think it's worth going through the process of how we got here. By tradition, for years, at the Finance Committee meeting, we had, and it's still on the agenda items, it's not really used anymore because of this ordinance, but we had a provision at an agenda item at Finance Committee where any member could suggest or ask, request you, the mayor, or Mr. Myers, Mayor Myers, or Mayor Collins, or whomever, to request to put an item on the agenda. And by tradition, at least one other member would pipe up and say, yeah, I think that's a good idea. And that's how it happened. In 2016, I was the author of the ordinance, but Councilman Bailey and I were the author of the ordinance that stated at the time that two members had the right under ordinance to request that any item be put on the agenda. Before that, it was just by tradition, gentleman's agreement, gentle ladies agreement. So in 2016, we passed this ordinance that said that it could be any two members. In 2020, Mr. Mayor, at your request, I authored the amendment to a number of these ordinances, including this one. And based on your request, Mr. Mayor, we changed it from two members to any one member, because as I recall, you telling me that as long as I'm mayor, I'll put on the agenda anything any council member wants. So we did enact this ordinance for the first time in 2016. It required two members. We amended in 2020 to require only one member. I'm fine with taking it back, but it's really kind of was a shame that it ever became ordinance. I liked it in the old days when it was just the gentleman or the gentle ladies agreement, and we did it by tradition.
Mayor, we've got a motion in a second.
We got a motion in a second?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. And that's the discussion. Anybody else got anything? Not all in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes carried.
First reading of an ordinance to amend chapter 10, elections, section 10-4, filing by candidates, subsection A.
I'll make a motion, we give first reading.
I'll second.
Okay, motion on the floor in a second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye. Aye. Opposed likewise. Ayes carried.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 5, Section 5.11.2, required improvement for final plat approval, subsection A, to clarify the process in relation to the permit to operate the water and sewer system. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 17th, 2023. The Planning and Development Committee voted to move the item to full council with the recommendation for approval at their meeting on May 8th, 2023.
I make a motion for first reading.
Second.
A motion on the floor in a second. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carried.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 13, Section 13.6.1, pre-application conference, subsection A, mandatory pre-application conference to include all subdivision review. The Planning Commission held a public hearing and made a recommendation for approval at their meeting on April 17th, 2023. The Planning and Development Committee voted to move the item to full council with a recommendation for approval at their meeting on May 8th, 2023.
I'll make a motion to give first reading.
I'll second.
Got 2 seconds. Okay, motion made in second. Any discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could hear a little bit of what this is exactly, I don't really understand.
Mayor, Council, this ordinance is due to subdivisions that we're experiencing in already developed areas of town where they're not, currently the ordinance requires TRC only if you're creating new streets. But we're seeing subdivisions where we could have, 12, 15 lots where we're not actually creating any new streets. We do need review by all departments, and that's what TRC is for. And so we're changing the ordinance to make sure those subdivisions don't not get that full review that they need.
Go with that, Kim?
Yes.
Any other questions or concerns? If not, all in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. Ayes carried.
First reading of an ordinance to amend the Unified Development Ordinance, Chapter 2, Section 2.55A, primary building height, downtown mixed use, to reduce the maximum height from 55 feet to 47 feet.
Mr. Mayor, I would, this was my proposal, and there has been a good bit of discussion this afternoon about it, whether or not it could, does, or should apply to the county building at 500 North Main Street. And what I've been telling folks this afternoon is if this council doesn't think that it should apply, of course, we can always rezone that property, either PUD or urban corridor. But my motion is really, it is focused primarily on the Hutchinson Square area. And I think that 5-story buildings are completely inappropriate. And for that reason, I would move first reading of the ordinance so it can be sent to Planning Commission and they can hold a public hearing.
Second that. Thank you for the discussion. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I have more of a question, and maybe I'm not sure if Jesse or Russ or Councilman McIntosh has the answer. But do we have elevations on the current buildings within this area? Okay, I know the UDO states roughly that the elevation is from the ground on the road facing side of the building. However, depending on the type of roof, it changes where the measurement is. And it's kind of different for a pitch roof, different for a flat roof. I was just interested in understanding what we have currently before we send maybe a first reading that says council desires to reduce from a maximum 55 to 47 if we have those present, our parking garage, the annex building we're currently in. I'd love to know some of that information.
I would, since you asked me, I would have loved Councilman Touchberry for you to have been able to take my place in the 30 some odd UDO planning meetings that took place when we discussed in great detail the issues that you just raised. And in fairness to our planning staff, they actually wanted, if I'm right, Jesse, they wanted the maximum height to not be feet, but the number of stories, knowing that a story is going to be somewhere between 10 and 15 feet, 99% of the time. So there was a lot of confusion, a lot of frustration, and not a lot of agreement throughout that process. It was a very contentious, convoluted process. Yeah, I would also say that I believe, but I don't know, that possibly the annex, depending on how you measure it, possibly the annex and the garage may be more than 47 feet. I think it would be close. But I would say that that's not a reason, a very good reason at all, not to make sure that future development, particularly along Hutchison Square, but in our historic downtown, isn't better than what we did here. There are plenty of us in town that were not exactly thrilled by what happened here. I mean, Councilman Bailey tells people clearly that he got into town politics because of this building. So we don't want to enshrine what we've done in the past. I think that if you look across, however you measure it, I don't believe there are any existing privately developed buildings in this zoning district that are more than 47 feet. I would be very surprised to learn that. If you consider that a floor is really a max about 15 feet, look for your 4-story buildings.
Jesse, what you consider a floor to be? Yeah, what do you consider the code address a floor?
So the height of a floor can vary depending on, generally it depends on the type of construction you're doing. Obviously, residential floors are generally shorter than commercial stories. So you generally see between about 8 or 9 feet at the lowest. And then, yeah, I would say 14, 15 would be generally the highest you would see. It's in terms of the height of a story.
Yeah.
And then of course you have the spacing between stories if you have multiple stories. I can't say exactly what the height of this building or the garage is. I tried to measure it on, the imagery information that we have. It looked like it was about 50 feet, but again, that's not a exact measurement. I wasn't here when this building was reviewed, so I don't know that I would remember back then how tall it was either, but and I don't know that we still have the plans. If we do, we can look at it, but generally we don't keep those for that long, but we might on our own buildings. Yeah, if it's our own building, we might still have it. Others we get rid of after 6 months. But yes, I will say staff would have preferred to have stories, so we didn't have that whole, discussion of it and, where do you measure it from? How do you, that whole thing? And I think what we had proposed for DMX was a 4-story height. And then for UCMX was a 6-story height. But then folks brought up the point that if you add all stories being 14 feet, you could have a 70-something foot tall building. I don't think anyone's going to build with multiple stories 14 feet in height, but that is true. Technically, it could have been that tall. So that's why it got changed to feet.
Well,
Thank you.
In hindsight being 2020, what we should have done is said, thank you for that suggestion and changed use urban corridor from 6 to 5 and here from 4 to 3. But we didn't, we got caught in the weeds is what happened. It was a weedy process.
Well, I remember very well when we went to 55 feet maximum. And I was in favor of that as fire chief, because I knew we could reach that height. And so I was very comfortable with that. And I knew that if you went 55 feet, it had to be sprinkled. And I'm real comfortable with a sprinkled building. I wouldn't stay in a 55-foot hotel if it wasn't sprinkled. In fact, I wouldn't stay above the 2nd floor if it wasn't sprinkled. And that's just me as a firefighter, but I don't see the need, Bill, of lowering it 8 feet. Even with Dickie's, explaining it the way he did. You lower it 8 feet, you're not going to notice that difference. If you come into if you drive into Charleston from the Cooper River Bridge, you're not going to be able to tell any of those buildings in Charleston which one's 10 feet or 11 feet, or which one is 8 feet and which one is 8 feet higher. You can't tell.
Would you entertain a motion to amend to lower it from 47 to 40? Because that was.
No.
Okay.
I want to leave it at 55.
Just making sure.
I'm gonna use an example. The lot that's on the corner of 78 and Main Street, where the gas station was, McCleary Station. That's a little small lot, but an investor could come in, a guy, and he can't build much of a building on that lot, but he could build a 5-story building. And whether it be an office building or whatever, and that's economic development. And that's money for the town. Now, I know you're talking about from here to the railroad track. I kind of agree with you a little bit there, even though Mike Bennett went with Terry and I when he was talking about looking at the property that Mr. Roberts bought over here. And he looked at it. And then he said, well, let's go look at Main Street. Well, we stood in front of Garen's and he looked across the street over there where the pool room used to be. And he said, now, if I wanted to do something, I'd do it right over there. I'd buy those 3 buildings in the middle of that block and I'd tear them down and I'd build me a 5-story hotel there. That's what he told Terry and I. Who else was with us? It was somebody, his son, I think. And somebody else.
I would suggest to you that if that started and back when you had that meeting, that we would all be ending our last terms on council. The idea that the people of Somerville, would support a 5-story hotel on Hutchinson Square is just, it's just not what the folks in Somerville want.
Somerville's 50 some odd thousand people now. Sure, the old people in Somerville, not old meaning in age, but the Somervillians, they would, but you better believe the people in the bridges don't care. Somerville is going to change. I agree with what Dickie said, but, and what you say, but we all have to face reality. Somerville is going to change, and I don't want the identity to Somerville to change. I'm very partial to what we got between here and the railroad track. But when it gets past the railroad track, look at Main Street. Does that look good to you? No. I mean, Lisa's got a plan of how to change the looks of that. Not,
We've all seen the plan. It actually predates Lisa, but we've all seen it.
yeah, well, it looks great, doesn't it? And it's not changing buildings.
It's not building 55 feet either.
No, but you know, I wouldn't mind having a 55-foot building there. And I was born and raised here 75 years
Well,
ago.
as I said, when I made the motion, if the concern is further down Main Street as you approach 78, the county building, building should be rezoned. It should be rezoned as a PUD because it's more than 5 acres and it's true multi-use. And if it was zoned PUD, we, meaning council and town staff, would actually have a seat at the table as to what happens there. So if we want to rezone, if we don't want to limit 500 North Main Street to 55 feet, we should rezone it. The example that you gave of the gas station, and we actually had a national retailer that wanted to come in there and build 1 story. And basically when they were told they couldn't have a drive-through, they went away. Despite the fact that there's a drive-through right across Highway 78, but that's, so, you know, we can rezone individual properties when they're on the edge, and 500 North Main and the gas station across the street on the edge of this far edge of the zoning classification. But as you come towards the historic downtown, I think 3 stories is a gracious plenty, and I think 47 feet will get us to a 3-story limit. In hindsight, when staff said you shouldn't do feet, you should do stories, we probably shouldn't have listened to them. We should have probably just lopped off a story from what they were recommending.
Well, you know, they tore down a nice town hall that used to sit right next door because they said it was rotten. And I watched them tear it down. There wasn't a rotten board in it.
But don't get me started on the old courthouse in St. George that was supposed to be, had to move out because it was full of asbestos, but people are still working in it.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I may not have stated my concern clear enough, and I thank you, Jesse, for kind of reinforcing the fact that at the end of the day, what we're asking for first reading is a reference to height. And I'm not saying it's arbitrary because I know you put some research into it, but we don't have a good inventory on what the existing heights are. Maybe there's a reference change that needs to be made for height. Maybe it's a story change, but I think driving us towards a reduction in height may not be the best solution. It may be a knee-jerk reaction to concerns. I agree with Mr. Myler that the character and nature of our downtown is extremely important. And we want to make sure that the bar and our planning commission are armed with ordinances that they can enforce to make sure that the outcome on these properties reflects that nature and character, but allows for things that are special for downtown Somerville. Chasing a height may not be the right decision, especially with the references to the ground. There's contours in Somerville that may allow for higher buildings, but they are nestled behind other buildings. Anyway, I would be more pleased if we just requested planning department and the planning commission review the height ordinance for what's appropriate for the town and have a public hearing on that.
I have to agree with Mr. Touchberry on this. That sounds like a great plan.
Well, then I hear you, but what you're saying is give it first reading, because that's how the process works. If we give it first reading, it doesn't become ordinance. It goes to the planning commission for them to study and evaluate and really dive down deep into the types of issues that you've raised. The 7 of us sitting up here once a month, twice a month, hopefully for no more than an hour or two, is not the optimal way to decide the best way to measure height of a building. But unfortunately for Mr. Chairman Reeves and others, that actually is their bailiwick. And I know that Chairman Reeves and other planning commissioners are just chomping at the bit to dive into the UDO a little bit more. But that's what first reading does. It puts it in the hands of our planning commissioners that do have the experience and expertise. And at that point, the public hearing that you think is a good idea becomes mandated by law. It just, to me, it's just like I said on the budget. First reading seems to be a no-brainer. What you do on second reading has nothing to do with what you do on first reading. And I think I told you today, Mr. Touchberry, it might not have been my proudest moment, but I had my reasons. I voted for first reading on the UDO. Felt like it needed to, we spent way too much time on it and it was bogged down. So I voted to give it first reading to keep the process moving, hoping that it would eventually become a document I could support. It never did. I voted against it on second reading and I voted to repeal it a year and a half later. But to not vote for first reading because it would allow the planning commission to study it and allow for a public hearing, and you want the planning commission to study it and you want a public hearing, that makes no sense.
I believe, Mr. Mayor, that the language is too specific to what the council is seeking to give the planning commission the latitude that they need, in my personal opinion. Therefore, I think we would need another ordinance anyway, so I'm going to vote.
I understand, but I would just say in my experience that the planning commission has minds of their own, and us putting, you got to put something down. We can put 47, 46, 48, 41. I've never known the planning commission to rubber stamp anything we've done, and we don't rubber stamp what they do.
I'm not against the planning commission doing anything, but I think there's 7 of us up here that got an obligation to do stuff sometimes. And we won't do it because we'd rather pass it on to somebody else and let them do it. I kind of agree with Russ. I mean, it's our obligation. I mean, you put this on the agenda.
Well,
Now you want to pass it on to somebody else.
That's just
I-
the law, Mr. Mayor Waring.
I-
The law is when we give first reading to a change in the
I
zoning.
understand that, Bill. Quit repeating yourself. Let's vote.
Okay. I'm not trying to send it to the planning commission. The law sends it to the planning commission. But that's what I think we all want, is for the public to weigh in and the planning commission to study it. It just so happens that that's what state law requires if we give first reading to an amendment of a zoning ordinance.
That's what you want. That's not what we all want. I don't want that.
Well, I just heard Mr. Touchberry say he wanted it, but he's going to vote against what he wants.
I know we got a motion in a second. Any more discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by raising right hand and vote aye. Who voted? Shelton, opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
2-5.
Next, for miscellaneous, reconsideration of council's decision to authorize the condemnation of 205 West Luke Street and 209 West Luke Street.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, I have spent a little time with Corporation Counsel, and I certainly heard what the family had to say tonight. I would think that postponing this is okay for us to do. I give them time to clean up the title, hopefully clean up the property at the same time. But if we're going that route, I think I would want to know that if the property is sold, unless we change our minds down the road, that we would have right of first refusal on buying that property.
I don't think we have a motion. I can't. They can't hear you. I don't believe that was a motion. We need a motion.
Well, I was mainly doing that for discussion so others could say what they wanted before making a motion. I'll happily turn that into a motion if you desire.
Well, let me put it this way. I agree with what Terry said. I think we need to give these owners of the property a chance to maximize their value. And because I don't think that the town wants to be in a position of causing taxpayers to lose money when we can avoid that. I think Mr. Swales made a very good point when he said that they were willing to work with the Unified Development Ordinance of the town to make sure that this, whatever is built there is in compliance with what the town feels is something that's going to be good, have a nice appearance for the town in front of the Dominion property that we just bought. So,
Terry, you changed that to a motion. We just.
No, well, I
reconsidered.
hadn't changed it to a motion. I think what would be appropriate is that we at least assign some time frame to this. And maybe say, we'll give the family 6 months to clear up the title
They can't
issues.
do it in 6 months, Terry. They can't do it in 6 months. They'll never clear that title in 6 months. I've been trying to clear a title that's not near as cloudy as that title. You can ask GW, I mean, he knows, but we met with them the other day. And both titles are really bad. One of them is terrible. I got a title that I've been trying to clear for 5 years. And spent a lot of money because it's a big piece of land. But what I would like to see us do, because I don't make motions, is just change our mind on condemning the property.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
having voted on the prevailing side last time, I would move that we withdraw authorization from Corporation Council, and the Corporation Council is no longer authorized to proceed with condemnation actions in this matter.
And I'd second.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just ask a question. Because I agree with the motion. Is there a time frame on when it can come back up again for condemnation?
Next meeting.
Okay, that's perfect. I agree 100%.
And they will let us know when they get it cleared up. And we have the right then, if they clear it, they would probably sell it to us.
No, I'm fine with that. I just would like the family to know that we want to give them time to clear it up, but we would also, once that is done, want to have the opportunity to buy the property at fair market value.
That's all right with you all, isn't it? That, yeah.
The only concern we have is investing any more money in it. At next meeting, we spend a fortune
Right.
demolishing homes, clearing title, spending an exuberant amount of money to a real estate attorney that can do the quiet title to clear it. And then the town says, well, we got it cleaned up, let's condemn it. That would be doing a disfavor to us as well. So it's a little catch-22 to invest in something you've invested so much in, with the town wanting it, with the knowledge that the town has the opportunity to just to condemn it. It's a little, I don't know how to say, how would you feel? You know what I mean? Would you invest your money into it? You've already got, but we have the UDO that controls what could be developed there. That's why we have the town that we have today.
And
If
Mr.
I
Mayor,
could respond to that, I understand your concern, and I think where I'm coming from is I want y'all to be protected for what you're trying to do. But I'd like us to be protected if you sell the property. You develop the property yourself, that's something different. If you sell the property, I would like y'all to give the town the right of first refusal.
There are people, everyone that has interest.
And Mr. Mayor, that's the reason why my motion was as specific as it was. The action we took last month was the only action we took last month was to authorize Corporation Council to proceed with condemnation. What's before of us is a reconsideration of that decision. To me, that's the only thing the motion can state. And so that's why the motion is to withdraw that authorization. And I think that's all that is before us. We either support the authorization or we withdraw the authorization.
Right. And Mr. Mayor, can I ask Corporation Council, condemnation, just to make sure I fully understand, when condemnation goes down, the town would be obligated to pay the highest and best use for the property?
You're
No.
obligated to pay just compensation.
Just compensation.
Just compensation is determined by ordering an appraisal, which is generally a MAI appraisal.
Then I think we're on the best
And
course.
that figure is always,
Dramatically lower than highest and best use.
So when they get, if they get a clear title, that would be worth a lot of money. And right now, to y'all's disadvantage, it's not worth anything. So, we wouldn't do that. That's why under Bill's motion, I don't think you got anything to worry about. You get a clear title, that building you looking at building. If you did that, I think we would support it. I think council would. I'm not gonna be here, but I'm pretty sure council would.
There's a motion in a second.
Yeah, we've got a motion. We've got a second. Okay, any more discussion? All in favor?
Would you clarify the motion again?
It's to withdraw the authorization for the town attorney to condemn. the
Yeah,
property.
and I second that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, just signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise. The ayes carry.
Discussion of change to Parks and Recreation impact fees.
I'll make a motion that we approve that.
And I'll second.
Well, for clarification, the item says discussion of change, but there is a proposed change in front of us? Or there are options in front of us?
There is a proposal in front of you. And
I believe it's just a variety of options. We're currently at an 80% discount on recreation impact fees, and I don't have it in front of me, but I reviewed it and it was just various options. So I think a motion has to specify what, if any, discount fee is given to the recreation impact fees.
since it's only on new residential homes and it's development, I would like to see it go to 100%. So that we can support what we need for all the development, particularly apartments, because they're so dense and have no green space for us to be able to cover that.
So, Mr. Jackson, your motion is to eliminate all discount for recreation impact fees. Is that correct?
Correct.
See if I understand you correctly, Bob. You're saying that you want to eliminate the discounts in total?
Yes, we've got all these apartment complexes and things coming up that are super high density. And there's not much we can do about it other than have an impact fee on those units so that the town can afford to do what we need to do to cover the people that are going to live there without going deeper into our general fund.
Well, I
And-
agree that we need to make some changes, but I wasn't thinking in terms of taking away the discounts in total because we're dealing with residential homes. I was hoping that we could find a happy place there that would give us some additional income for the Parks and Recreation Department. That's not
Well-
create a problem for people who are trying to buy their first home.
The people that pay that will mostly be new residents. And what we don't have from impact fees, we will have to take out of the general fund.
I have written in my notes. I have written in my notes here that right now, each new residential building is like something like $771, but it could be up to 37 or 3,800, and that would be at 100%. So it kind of gives you an idea of what we're talking here. And that, again, this is just new residential.
And I think the other two categories of impact fees within impact fees, not Parks and Rec, are both at 0% discount.
And I haven't heard anybody complain about that.
I'll second Bob's motion.
And-
If I might, I'm not sure that if we're gonna have to do this by ordinance. I'm almost thinking that it has to go to planning commission for recommendation. It's one thing to do. Ordinance at the same time, motion to have it reviewed by the planning commission. Make the recommendation.
And we, to ask an inquiry of you, Mr. Parker, and maybe also for other staff. We recently, over my, I think, sole objection, raised the impact fees for Parks and Recreation and other impact fees, municipal impact fees and fire impact fees. Did that process go through planning commission and get two readings as an ordinance? Or is there a problem with the legality of those impact fee adjustments?
That process did go through the full process, went through planning commission.
It was worth a shot.
Yeah, had the full study done, had a recommendation to council, and then came to y'all for.
And it
two
was an
readings
ordinance
as
that got two readings.
Yeah, it's a full ordinance. In addition, y'all approved both the impact fee study, the ordinance, and the CIP as a part of that, because they kind of all required together. So that was because we were updating the study, which we're supposed to do every 5 years or so. We were updating the study to see how much we could charge legally. And so this isn't updating the study. This is just changing the discount rate.
Does that discount rate, and I could ask you, does that discount rate today exist in ordinance?
It is. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it would still require a change to the ordinance.
Okay,
but
so we
it's
can't, it's not an ordinance. We can't vote on it.
not an ordinance. But yeah, right now you have a 0% discount rate on both municipal and fire, and an 80% discount rate on parks and rec. Previously, we had the 80% parks. We also had a discount rate on fire, I believe, of 30% and a 0% on municipal. So
Thank you.
Councilman Jackson, did you hear all of that?
I did.
So I think it requires a change to instruct Corporation Council to amend an ordinance to show 0% discounts across the board that will be sent to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation back to us.
And I'm fine with that.
And if I may, I mean, it can go that way or it can come to us first for first reading. I mean, it's up to you. It's your motion. But if for some reason it didn't pass first reading, we're kind of putting some work on the planning commission for no reason, but it can happen. You can start with us for first reading, or you can start at the planning commission, either way.
I think we have first reading next month
One thing to
and
note
then
is,
go to the
if we-
planning commission.
If we do a public hearing,
Pardon?
it does require 30 days notice for this rather than the typical 15 days.
And we must have a public hearing.
It's kind of unclear in state law, but it'd probably be best if we had one, yes.
I looked at it there. One other thing that I discussed was on Eric Shivers in town, Municipal Association, and it's better be safe than sorry. Get into the data big roof, you gotta change it the same way you put it in. But I think the best way to do it is to take it to the planning commission, and we'll have first reading on board.
Okay,
That seems what the way to go to me. I think that's the way that we should go. Exactly what you said, because then as we move forward, we'll have, we will know that we're within what the law allows us to do.
Mr. Parker, I don't think we would be able to have first reading in June if it goes to the planning commission first. Well, planning commission meets on Monday, so one is first reading in June.
Planning commission, before the secretary.
So it sounds like we will have it on the council agenda for consideration for first reading and then to planning commission. Is that where,
can we announce?
what did he say?
Never mind.
Is that your motion?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
From the recording.
So I'll second that.
Okay. All right, so we'll have an ordinance prepared for first reading in June. Okay.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Then discussed it enough, I guess. All in favor of this, signify by raising your right hand, voting aye.
Aye.
Opposed likewise. You opposing, Bill?
And
Authorize the town
That's
administrator to enter into a contract to renew services rendered by Trident Security Services.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion on the floor in a second. Any discussion?
Yes, can you, is this our security here in the, and do we have something to look at, like,
Yeah, hopefully the agreement was in your packet.
I couldn't find it.
I do have some numbers for you, and I will tell you that Carrie, who's been managing that contract, and of course, our finance director has spent a great deal of time negotiating that contract. It looks like it's about a 10% increase per hour. But what we were able to negotiate is the majority of that increase actually going to the officers rather than to the company. So what it would do is increase our employees, the officers that are here under contract, from $13.50 an hour to $15.50 an hour. And the supervisors from $14.25 an hour to $16 an hour. And that's still extremely, I wouldn't say extremely, but it's lower than what other entities are paying. So I think it was a good negotiation.
And we're, have the ability for the same people that have been servicing us to stay here.
Any more discussion? Okay. All in favor of this, signify by raising the right hand, vote aye.
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 Opposed likewise. Ayes carried. Okay, public comments on any topic.
Linda Wetzel.
Good afternoon. The mayor has a copy of the police report for indecent exposure again on Atlantic Street. In my backyard, and the people in the back are urinating in the ditch behind the building. And when it rains, all the water swells up. And it's a stench and the funk in my backyard. My address is 108 Atlantic Street, and I'm concerned about Marion Avenue. The large bushes on Marion, I think I forgot Salisbury or whatever street. You can't turn or make your turn because the bushes are so big. You've got to drive into the road in order to make your turn. Nobody is controlling cutting the bushes, the azaleas. I know they're beautiful, but it's a hazard. You can't, I don't want to pull out in the street and have an accident, hit somebody and saying that I'm not adhering to the stop sign. Parkwood and Central Avenue, Fish Camp. I'm sorry, the maintenance, the trucks, the laundry truck blocked the street, oncoming traffic. You can't even get on Parkwood, and that's a main thoroughway, and it's dangerous. You can't get on Parkwood Drive because of the people at Fish Camp all over the road, on the sides of the road. You can't drive through. The other people will not stop to let you get through. Also, Atlantic Street, that's not the only street, like Parkwood, Atlantic Street, there's 5 and 6 cars in the beginning of the road. I'm leaving Atlantic Street to get on Central. People are coming into Atlantic. I have to slam on my brakes because the incoming traffic or the lady down the street, she drives like a bat out of hell and you can't stop. I can't get off of Atlantic Street because of excessive cars on the side of the road. 5, 6, 7, sometimes it's all the way down the road. Also, and we got new neighbors, and I've asked them to pick up after their dogs. They're walking the dogs and they don't pick up the poop. Their yards are never cut. It looks like the Addams family. Bushes all over the place. The house, the ivy or whatever growing all over it, was just like a house abandoned. And music all day. I'm home now completely. Plant in the back of me, or how many of them? 3 of them. Loud noise. I have to call the county, I have to call the city in order to get them to stop that. And if the police does not come in, I haven't seen a policeman in my neighborhood unless you call them, like maybe once every 3 months. Somebody will come down the road. If you don't have the funds, how do we get? We pay for y'all to have police protection and somebody to come down the road to check on our neighborhoods, to know the neighbors down the street, and we can't get anybody. The county says they can't clean the ditches because they're short-staffed. They don't have no staff to do the work. Where's the money going? Why can't we get stormwater drainage cleaned up on that road? Also, night parking on Parkwood, they're all on the sidewalks. The new pond that was placed on Parkwood Drive, they're all night parking, or the residents that picked the house on Parkwood and Shepherd Street, they are parked on the sidewalks. You can't even walk down the sidewalk because they don't have enough land. They built 4 houses on one corner and nobody has efficient parking. And you can't do your walking down the street. I walk the dogs down the street and I pick up their poop. But still, yeah, you can't get through because of the residents parking on the sidewalk. Thank you.
That's all I have for public comment.
Mayor,
I make a motion, we go into executive session to discuss personnel and legal and contractual matters, personnel matters related to organizational and salary structure of municipal court. Discuss contractual matters and receive legal advice related to property acquisition, and discuss personnel matters related to the Director of Community and Economic Finance.
Second.
All in favor, just signify by raising your right hand, vote aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed, likewise.